Hi there, it's Simon Hurley from Inklips. Thank you so much for stopping by. I hope your day is amazing. I guess I've been kind of on a shaped card kick lately because I created those cards with the shaped edges, and today I decided to go full out and create shaped cards for you guys and show you guys some tips and tricks along the way on how to create these. Now, I created some with the larger images, and I also took some smaller images later on, and I'll show you how to create those cards with the same shaped effect. So I'm going to start off by showing you guys this simple yet elegant design, and I just love the detailed edge on the card, which makes for a really cool cutout. So I'm going to be using this Conservatory of Quote stamp set from Brutus Monroe. I just love this huge flower in it with lots of detail, and also those sentiments which are really encouraging, and there's a lot of inspiration in there as well. So I'm going to be taking this stamp, and I mounted it onto my acrylic block, but you can use the Misty here as well if you want perfect stamping, or you want to stamp it over again. And I'm inking it up using Memento Tuxedo Black ink, which is Copic friendly, so later on when we color with Copics, nothing will bleed. And I'm inking that up, and I'm going to stamp it down onto a card base here. Now the fold is at the top edge, which is really important. You want to overlap the stamp so it's going off the edge, right on that edge with the fold, and this makes it so that the whole card will be intact when we cut everything out later on. So you just want to make sure you're overlapping on the edge that has the fold on it, and that will make sure that the whole card stays together and nothing will come apart. So I'm going to cut this out with my scissors here. This is pretty simple. You just want to leave a little bit of a white border because I don't want to go into all that detail there, and I want the cutout edge to be pretty simple. And I'm also just going to cut right around it, moving the paper instead of the scissors. This gives a nice smooth edge in case if you struggle with that, and it makes it really easy to cut the whole thing out. Now you're going to want to avoid cutting out that area where we overlapped the stamp, because once again that's going to keep the whole thing together, and if you cut that out, the whole card come apart and it's not really a card anymore. So after I'm done cutting this out with that edge on there, I can go around in some of those details on the top edge with that little opening there, and you can cut that little part out too, avoiding those two little parts that overlap. So for all the card images today, I'm just using Copic markers because you can get some really good depth and dimension when you're coloring, as well as some super bright colors, and it doesn't take a long time at all. I'm going to just blend these all together. Now, I'm not super good at Copic coloring, so don't expect too much in this video. I'm just doing some really simple coloring, and I've kind of sped it up and cut some parts out here and there, so it's really quick to watch, but I just wanted to show this for all you colorists out there who love doing this or just want to learn a little bit more. So I'm coloring all these images in now. I'm not a flower expert either, so I didn't know which color to color these. I just chose all my Copic markers and I went crazy with this and colored them all the colors because I didn't know which one to choose, and I didn't want it to look too bland either. I wanted it to be nice and bright. So I'm coloring all these in, and for each different flower that you guys see here, I'm using 3 different shades of each color range of the marker. So the colors, these Copic markers usually have a letter right at the beginning, and that will indicate the color family it's in, and then it'll have numbers following it, and you're going to want to choose numbers that are pretty similar for each one to get that depth and dimension you want, and to get some really nice blending as well. With these Brutus Monroe images also, and a lot of other stamp companies as well, they'll be super nice and add those little dark lines in where you're going to want to do some shading. And then you can just add your darker color there and then blend it out with your other colors as well, which I find really helpful with some of these larger images that might be a little difficult to color. So now I'm moving on to the leaves here, and I'm just doing a flicking motion for this, and I'm just kind of going from the inside out of the leaves, and that'll add some dimension to those as well. And on these I'm just using 2 different colors here to add some color to these little leaves. If your colors are pretty far apart, like some of my greens here today, I didn't do this in today's video, but if you want to get some even better blending, you can touch the tip of the lighter marker against the darker marker, which will transfer just a little bit of ink, enough to kind of blend the colors together and get an in-between color. So for these greens, if you have colors that are far apart, that's a good way to stretch your markers and get a little bit more use out of them and a little more bang for your buck as well. So I'm moving on to the background of the card. I just wanted to make this some darker gray. So I'm taking this medium shade of gray and I'm just going right from the center flower out. And I'm not going all the way out to the edges, just kind of around these flowers to add some dimension over there. And I'm also taking that marker and I'm going to zoom in here, and you guys can see I'm just adding it right in those little black lines that you saw that I was talking about when Brutus Monroe adds those in for all your little coloring. And you can add a little bit more dimension if you want a harsher coloring and shadow there. So now I'm going over some of those parts with the glossy accents. I love doing this, especially with flowers. It just adds like little raindrops, I guess, or yeah, it just adds some dimension and texture to the card. So now for a little more goofy of one and some simpler outlines, I'm going to use this cat stamp set. It's called, I think, Rockstar Pets from Brutus Monroe, and this one is super awesome. I just love the little pets here that are pretty darn big images, so they work well for this as well. Now the fold on this card, I'm stamping it with the tail going off and the fold is on the left side, so that'll help keep the whole card intact there, and I'm just stamping this down again with Copic friendly ink. Now the one thing I do want to mention about this card is there's not too much for the card to hold on to with just that little tail. It still is very stable, but it's not as much as the 2 points on the last card. You just want to keep that in mind when you're stamping these images to make sure your card is going to be stable and that you're not leaving too much or too little over the edge so the whole card can hold together. Now, I don't have any cats in my life, so again, I didn't really know how to color this too well. But I just decided to take some brown markers, again, go in with those on those lines that are a little bit darker, and I'm doing some darker colors there, and then I'm blending it out with some lighter markers as well, with all these different brown shades here. And if you want to give the cat a little bit of fur, like I am here, you can leave some of those zigzag kind of lines in there to give some texture and dimension to the cards. Then I'm just blending the whole thing out with my lightest color here and going over the whole little cat. And then to add a little bit more here, I'm just adding that darker gray again on some of those lines to add a little bit of variation in the fur and a little bit of a darker color as well. Then I'm cutting this card out and just leaving a little bit of a white border around it once again, moving the paper instead of the scissors to get a nice white and easy line. Now, a viewer asked me a while ago when I did those border cards if they stood up well, and yes they did, but if you want to display them for a super long time, her recommendation was to add a little bit of acetate on them. So if you want to do that with these cards as well, they do stand, but if you want to make them stand a little bit better, you can add an acetate base right behind it, so it still looks like the card is a shaped card, but you just have that nice rectangle behind it to support it. I'm adding some glossy accents to those little glasses just to give it that shiny effect and make them look a little bit more realistic and add some dimension to the card as well. So now I'm moving on to the last and final card here, which is using some of the smaller images in your set to create the same kind of look of these shaped cards and get that same kind of effect with any of the images you guys might have at home. I'm using this Home Sweet Home stamp set from Brutus Monroe, which has a bunch of these little tiny houses in it, which I just love. And all these images are great for coloring that I'm showing in today's video, so that's why I'm showing all the coloring as well. I'm stamping these down, once again, overlapping on that top edge, which has the fold on it, so that'll keep the whole thing intact. And there's 3 points of contact there, which will give us a nice support. So then I'm stamping that bottom row as well. So by putting all these images together on that acrylic block and making sure they all go together on the card, it'll give you that nice full shaped card and an image that's big enough to do this technique. So I'm stamping that all down, and then I'm going to color this one in, just using some bright colors once again, kind of like I did the flowers, except I'm flicking it up from the bottom to the top. So almost like a light would be hitting the top of the houses, I guess. Now there's not too much shading I wanted to do on this because I didn't want to go into super detail, but if you want to color all the different windows in and do all the right shading there, you can. But once again, I'm just flicking the marker to the top from the bottom and not doing super much blending from that color, and I'm leaving a little bit of a white space at the top as well to give it kind of a more artistic look and not really coloring all the houses in perfectly. When choosing all the colors for today's card, I made that they had the same amount of saturation and darkness so that nothing will really overpower the rest of the colors when I'm coloring these houses in. Also, I did go out of the lines a couple times here. If you want to make that go away or push it back into the image, you can always use an alcohol ink blender or something like that to push some of that color back in. And if it's still not disappearing, you can use a white pen and go right around the border or the edges to make that little color disappear there and make it kind of blend in with the card base. And that will make sure you don't have to start over with all your coloring. So I'm just finishing it off with this pink house here and just blending all that out to the top of the card. And you'll notice that the roofs kind of went off the edge. When you're picking your image, you don't want to pick an image that has something you're going to put off the edge that's really important in it. So all these images didn't really have anything that was important that had to go off the edge here. So then I'm cutting this out, and this one has the really simple edge here. I'm just going right around the houses with the borders, just super simple, kind of rectangular card. And then I'm going to go around those houses at the top as well to give little gaps in there to make it look a little bit better as well. So after I'm done cutting that out, I'm going to add just a little bit more glossy accents to this card as well. If you can't tell, I'm obsessed with glossy accents, which isn't a bad thing. And I'm going to add it to all these windows to, again, add some dimension, and also the windows would be glossy, so it just makes it look a little bit more realistic on your card, even though these tiny houses aren't really realistic at all. So I love how these cards turned out, but we're not quite finished yet. I'm going to stamp down all the sentiments for these cards, and I'm adding it right onto the inside instead of the outside, because I don't really want to mess with any of these images. On this one, on the flower, I'm stamping "If you can dream it, you can do it" by Walt Disney, and I just love that quote on the inside. It's so inspirational and things like that, which I just think sends an awesome encouraging message to whoever you're going to send this to. And then on the inside of the house images, I wrote love makes a house a home, so you can give that to somebody who moved into a house recently. And for this last cat playful image, I'm just adding the you're a rock star right on the inside, which just is a fun message for this little cat card. So that finishes off for today's cards. I hope you guys really enjoyed it. If you did, please leave a big thumbs up. And don't forget to leave a comment down below. Tell me which was your favorite card, if you want to try out this technique, and what you're going to do it with as well. And I would love to see your creations if you tag me on any of your social media platforms. The sky's the limit with this technique, so I encourage you guys to just have fun and play around with whatever stamps you guys have, as it'll make really cool shaped cards, and I would love to see all your creations. So if you want to click that subscribe button, you can click on my little avatar there. You can watch more videos on screen if you like my content, and if you want to head out to my blog, there'll be much more information, pictures, and a full supplies list over there for you guys to go shopping if you want. So I hope to see you guys very soon in another video in my channel, and I hope you guys will have an amazing day. Bye!